Hi everyone, welcome back to the Daily Increment. I'm Daniel Susser, Agile Coach, and today we're going to do part 2 of the Scrum on My Fridge series, the Scrum events. So we started off looking yesterday at transparency, inspection and adaptation being the pillars of Scrum, and the Scrum events are the ways that a team can live these pillars and to make them brought into real life through the different meetings that they have and through some activities that enable these pillars. So I'll show you what I mean. So the first Scrum event is the sprint. The defining feature of Scrum is splitting work into time-bound increments. So instead of saying we're going to work on a certain project for months and months and months, instead you say we're going to work on this project for months and months and months, but we're going to split that time into sprints. And at the end of each sprint, we're going to deliver. Why is it called a sprint? Because the idea is that the team focuses, pushes really, really hard in that time and tries hard to a focused goal, just like a sprinter would. So it's called a sprint. In Scrum in general, the sprints normally last between 1 and 4 weeks. If it's less than 1 week, you can't really get anything done and you have too many meetings and there's not enough actual working time. And if it's longer than 4 weeks, then you lose focus and the team takes on something too big and it starts getting too complex. So an ideal sprint is somewhere between 1 and 4 weeks. I personally prefer a 1 week or a 2 week, like a really short one. The team focuses all on one thing and then pushes together. And this is related to where Scrum as a terminology actually comes from. Jeff Sutherland and Ken Schwaber, who put the Scrum framework together in the 80s and 90s, called it Scrum because it's a rugby scrum. In a rugby scrum, you have a cross-functional team pushing together for a short amount of time in the same direction. In that a rugby scrum has locks, it has a hooker, it has flankers, it has the number 8, it has props, and these are all different functionalities on a rugby pitch. They all play a slightly different role of how to attack and how to tackle and how to defend. But for the Scrum, they all get together, they coordinate with each other, and they push in a concerted way for a short amount of time to achieve a difficult aim, which is to push the other team back and to win the ball. So similarly, in a Scrum team, you have a cross-functional team who each have different roles and specialities, pushing together for a short amount of time to achieve a difficult aim. Just in this case, they do that in the sprint. A sprint enables transparency, inspection, and adaptation because you have transparency, as in the team is very transparent about what they're working on in a sprint. So as opposed to a very long project where a team, it's not very clear what they're working on at any one time, which thing they're focusing on in the giant list of features in a project. In Scrum, you have a team that says, for this sprint, we're going to work on feature X. We're going to work on this thing for the business. There's inspection, because the idea is that at the end of the sprint, you have something that's finished. Not half finished, not nearly finished, finished, so that you can inspect it, see what it does, and what it does is going to depend on the thing that you're making. But if you're making a bit of a website, you have a finished feature on the website, a button that works after your sprint, and then you can look at it and see if it's good and see if the users use it in the way you want. If you're building a volunteering program, maybe a sprint is coming up with a new thing that your volunteers could do, a new activity, a new opportunity for them, and the sprint is like designing the end-to-end journey for them doing that volunteering experience. And then at the end of it, you have something finished that you can ask them if it's the right thing, if they enjoyed it. And then a sprint enables adaptation because once you've learned whether the users like it or not at the end of the sprint, you can change direction and you can adapt to what you learn. Whereas if you have a longer project which is not defined by a short period of time, it might be a long time before you have a finished thing which you can give to a user, which you can get feedback and adapt from. So Scrum is all about setting up the team to be able to learn really well, really quickly, to be able to adapt and do the right thing. The second event in the sprint is the planning. And a sprint starts with a planning. The sprint is the whole cycle, but it starts with this planning. And planning is when the team gets together and they say, what are we going to do in the sprint. They know, or they get a sense of priority from what's called the product backlog, which we're going to cover next time. But the planning meeting is where the team gets together and plans what's going to happen in the sprint. So there's an opportunity for the team to say, we think that in this 2-week sprint, we can achieve X, and they work out how they're going to do that together. So instead of planning a whole project up front, they just have a very short, detailed planning at the beginning of the sprint. The next event is called the Daily Scrum. So the team gets together every single day, and they have this Scrum. The team get together and work out, how are we going to achieve the goal of the sprint? How are we going to finish all this work that we committed to at the beginning in our daily work? Does anyone need any help? Is there anything in the way? Are there any blockers? Do we need any clarity about any of the work we're on? And there's a daily 10 or 15 minute meeting where the team coordinates on the work. If your daily Scrum is taking longer than 10 or 15 minutes, your planning probably wasn't very good, because it means the team wasn't all on the same page and they don't have a good understanding. So a daily Scrum can be quite a good diagnostic. If your team is able to discuss what are we going to do today very easily, then they have a good shared understanding of the work. If not, and they have to go into lots of details, planning's probably not very good. So this happens every day of the sprint, and then at the end you have what's called the sprint review. And the sprint review is where you take the finished thing that Scrum is designed to produce, and you get together with all the people that care about it. So whether that's your users or your stakeholders, it's up to the team to decide who they want to review in front of. And you show them, you say, we've built this thing on the website, or we have made this volunteering opportunity, or we've done this thing. And this is the third way that you can have transparency, inspection, and adaptation. What I should have said was that the daily Scrum allows you to have transparency, inspection, and adaptation, because every day it's very clear what the team are working on. You have a board that has the work written on it. So there's transparency there, and then the team can inspect what's going on. They can say, is the stuff that we're doing the right thing? Is it working? And then they can adapt if it's wrong. So, and that's also true of the planning meeting, right? The team can take the plan and say, it's a very clear plan. Can we inspect it? As in, let's talk about it. And then if it's the wrong plan or it's not going to help achieve the aims, then you adapt. So the sprint review is where you do your transparency, inspection, and adaptation for the whole sprint, i.e. the team gets together with all these people and you show them the work. Transparency, because you've shown them something. You inspect it, i.e. you look at it and you go, is this the right thing? Is this what we need? And then if it is, fantastic. You don't need to adapt, but if it's wrong, or if you don't like it, then you can adapt well at the end of the review to the direction of the product team. And finally, and whereas until now we've been talking about transparency, inspection, and adaptation, about what the team does, like what are they making, what does this product look like, there's another axis that Scrum works on, which is how the team are working together. So the what is the actual thing that's going to create the value. Is this a good website? Does it solve the user need? Is it valuable? Does it make money? Does it help people? Whatever. And then how is, what are all the conversations and tools and activities that take place during the sprint that the team use to get there? And how well are they working? Are we talking to each other well? Are we communicating well? Are we using the planning meeting properly? Things like that. So the retrospective is a Scrum event at the end of the sprint where the team gets together and has some transparency, inspection, adaptation about how they're working, so that next sprint things can be easier and things can be better. And you might have the experience of getting together every 6 months with your managers or with leadership. Hopefully you get it at least every 6 months, but some people have less. And they say, what's going wrong? What can we do better? Let's have a wash up. Maybe at the end of a 2-year project, you go, right, what could have been done better? And then everyone complains about what went wrong along the project, and they say, well, the communication was terrible, and then what happens? Nothing. Because what you say is, right, well, let's fix these things in time for the end of the next project, so we'll see you guys in a year and a half, and everything will be better. And then that's just normally too big or too long a time to have any focus to improve stuff, and everything just meanders on as usual. Whereas in Scrum, every 2 weeks you're expecting the team to get a little bit better at working together. The retrospective should elicit some transparency. It should ask the team, what are we doing together? Like what are our agreed practices and processes? And what happened in this sprint and how did that feel and how did it work? You can then inspect them. You can say, were these practices useful? Were they not useful? And And I'm not just talking about the events of the Scrum, I'm talking about all of the ways that a team work together, using email, how they're talking to each other, who's involved in which conversations, just all the stuff that gets in the way of good work being done. That is the topic of the retrospective. So you inspect it and you look at it and you say, are these practices and things that we're doing as a team working? And if not, let's change them. And crucially, let's change something in the next sprint. So just like Scrum is really good at helping you break a product idea down into really small things that you can finish, Scrum is also incredibly powerful at taking your team improvement and the stuff that can take a long time and can be quite woolly. So sometimes the retrospective someone will come out with like, let's improve the business's understanding of our work. You can't do that in 2 weeks in that form. What you can do in that 2-week period is you can have a meeting where you tell the business about your work, or you can invite everyone to your planning meeting or whatever. But Scrum encourages you to do a bit of finished team improvement as well as part of your Scrum practice. And then it means that by the time you get to the next planning session, you've hopefully got a more effective team that can work better together, that can produce quicker, can produce higher quality things, can understand what's needed. Those are the Scrum events. If you like that thing I just did about the Scrum events, then hit the subscribe button and you'll hear next time about the Scrum artifacts and the Scrum people, the Scrum roles. And then you'll have a full overview of the beginning of Scrum, and then we can go into some detail on some things. If you hit subscribe, that helps me. It makes me know that these videos are landing somewhere other than in my own YouTube account, and I'll make more stuff. If you tell me what you like, I'll also try and do that. See you next time.